Great Gatsby was F. Scott Fitzgerald's third novel. It was published in 1925. It is narrated by Nick Carraway. It's a first person. Uh, it is the only novel that Fitzgerald wrote in first person. The setting takes place in the summer of 1922. More specifically, it starts on June 7th, 1922, and ends in October of 1922. So some backdrops of the setting, you know, of the time. World War I ends on November 11th, 1918, but most of the soldiers don't return to the United States until 1919. This is important. World War I brought disillusionment. It seemed to most that technology had failed and brought massive graves. People renewed their vigor in leading alternative lifestyles, fast paced, full of hedonism, and living for the day instead of the future. Note that Jay Gatsby and Nick Carraway were both in World War One. Nick Carraway will start the novel in chapter 1 talking about the Great War, which was World War One. There was the book published in 1925. World War II doesn't start until 1939. Some other things that are important as far as this backdrop: jazz. The novel has been called the novel of the Jazz Age. In 1917, the New Orleans Jazz Band recorded "Lively Stable Blues." It helped make jazz popular and introduced the record player to the American society. And in a few years, record players were like television sets. Everyone had to have one. Of course, there was no television sets in 1917. This is really white jazz. Jazz with the New Orleans Jazz Band was a white jazz band. They sort of were stealing the music of African American jazz musicians. So the jazz that F. Scott Fitzgerald really refers to, and the jazz that shows up in some of the party chapters, particularly chapter 3, is white jazz musicians, and we'll talk about particularly who those allusions refer to when we get to those chapters. Another part of the backdrop: women earned the right to vote in 1919. Also, Prohibition went into effect in 1920. In 1922, everyone drinking in this novel is really breaking the law. 1922, so Prohibition, the 18th Amendment. Prohibition lasted 13 years and introduced into America speakeasies, organized crime, and bootlegging. It was an era of fast money. Thus began, as Fitzgerald said, the most expensive orgy in history. So organized crime really comes out of this idea of the Prohibition. It's one of the things that Prohibition created. Very important for the novel. We'll see that Jay Gatsby is probably is part of organized crime and probably a bootlegger. We'll talk about that more in detail when we get into all the rumors that are he's sort of a mystery as far as who he is and what he is about. We also have automobiles. Automobiles become in vogue in fashion. The assembly line made them affordable. Automobiles are a huge symbol in this story, and we'll talk about all the car crashes or car wrecks that happen, and perhaps what they reinforce as far as the symbolism of the novel itself. We also have radio. So the 1920s is really the start of mass culture or mass communications. You have the radio, you have automobiles, you have record players. So the places that are important in this chapter, you have East Egg and West Egg, the two eggs which are Long Island. East Egg is old money, people with names, family backgrounds, people who inherit their money and don't have to work. The Tom Buchanans live in East Egg. West Egg is sort of new money. It's less respectable. There's wild parties on West Egg. Both the eggs seem to symbolize this idea of dreams, things that are possibilities. Eggs haven't hatched yet, and so when an egg hatches, you have life, and out of life you have intimate possibilities. Um, People come to West Egg to find something. They're searching for something. And we'll talk about like actually in this story, everybody is really searching for something. You also have New York, particularly Manhattan. Manhattan is a place where dreams really hit a brick wall. They hit reality. And then the fourth setting or place in the setting is the Valley of Ashes. The Valley of Ashes sort of symbolize spiritual death, failure. Um, we'll see who lives there and what is up with the person or the people that live there. This is a love story of sorts, and yet, the major themes include the illusion or disillusion of the American dream. Sometimes the failure of the American dream. It's really, I think, more the illusion of the American dream, the impossibility of this elusive nature of what the American dream is and represents, and how it is incorrect or hypocrisy as far as what is possible with dreams. It's also about social classes in the United States and this idea of capitalism in the United States. The Great Gatsby has sort of sometimes been called the poetry of capitalism. We'll look at capitalism in this book. The people who win in the book are capitalist. The meaning of time and the idea of creating oneself is important. Everyone in this novel is looking for something. Everyone in this novel is dreaming of something. Yet, do any of them actually find it? And we'll talk about that. Example, Gatsby is searching for his lost love of his youth. Tom is looking for that last football game. Tom played football in college. Daisy is looking for something, but she's not quite sure what it is. Perhaps it becomes Jay Gatsby. Perhaps it's something else. Nick is looking for his future as far as a profession, and he's on Wall Street selling bonds when the novel opens up. The story is really also about the Midwest versus the East. The major characters in this book are all from the Midwest, yet they're all on the East Coast. And the East Coast is, sort of symbolizes corruption in the American dream, where the Midwest is sort of innocence. So you have here's the characters, the major characters in the book. You have Nick, who is middle class or upper middle class. He does work for a living, so he's not quite the elite class, upper class of the Tom Buchanan. Tom Buchanan, the next character, is old money, represents capitalism. He does not have to work for his job. He's inherited his money. He uses his money to make money. He does whatever he wants. Daisy Fay, Tom Buchanan's wife, Daisy Buchanan, is from the old aristocratic South. He's from Kentucky. Also old money, but sort of a Southern aristocratic family. Jordan Baker, she is a representative of the symbolism of the new woman. She's a golfer. She is from the South too, same place that Daisy is from, but she is a lot freer than Daisy. She's an independent woman. Like I said, she's represents the woman in the 20s. She is a flapper. She goes to parties. She hangs out with men that she can use. She's a golfer. We'll see what more about her later. Then you have Jay Gatsby, who is new money. He's a man of the 20s. He is the self-created persona of what he has envisioned himself to become, or what he wanted himself to become. And then finally we have a minor character, but George Wilson is working class. The major storyline focuses on Jay Gatsby and Daisy Buchanan's relationship. They're the love affair that they have, love affair out of wedlock, or out of Daisy's married, Gatsby's not. There's many subplots that revolve around Nick's relationship with everybody else. You have Nick and Tom. They both went to Yale together. So there's a friendship there. You have Nick and Daisy. Daisy is Nick's cousin. You have Nick and Jordan. Nick begins to date Jordan very quickly in the novel. You have Nick and Gatsby. Gatsby is Nick's neighbor, ironically, because Gatsby owns this huge mansion. Nick has found this small sort of cottage next to Gatsby's house. It's sort of he calls an eyesore. So there's a reason why Nick Carraway is the perfect narrator in this novel. He has a connection with all the other characters, and all the subplots revolve around those connections. All right, that's it for the introduction. We'll talk about chapter 1 tomorrow.